the less we do something, the harder it is to jump back into it. But if it's like going to the gym, like if you go a few times a week, then you build that muscle and it doesn't feel so hard to use. I thought this was fascinating to learn a few years ago, that one of the reasons that humans are even a species today that exists is because we worked as community. We worked together to survive. We would not have survived as individualists. Networking really can be fun.
Yeah.
Like if you can, kind of goes back to that mindset piece, like think about it in a way that isn't intimidating or icky or gross or like manipulative, and come at it at a playful way. It's going to have a very different energy to it in your conversations.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Career Kickstart Conversations. I'm Kailyn, your host, and today we have with us Lauren Wingard. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey everybody, my name's Lauren, and I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit about networking and doing that without feeling that gross feel that some of us get when we do it. So a little bit about my background. I am born and raised in North Carolina. I have a background in leadership development. I worked at Red Hat for about 13 years. And now I'm working as a career coach, helping people land jobs that they love. And it's what I love to do.
Great. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And like she said, the episode is networking without feeling icky, because we all have been there. Or if you haven't, when you network, you will probably feel it. But Lauren's going to teach us how to not feel that possibly. So we'll just start off with the definition of networking. What is that?
Yeah. This one's really important. And it's a tool we use in coaching too, to think about, kind of get back to the basics. Like, what does that word really mean? Because we can put a lot of our own definition or connotations around words. So for example, for networking, baseline, it just means the action of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. So do you hear anything in there about like over asking or there's no negative part of that definition, right?
I mean, if you think about it, we're kind of doing it every day and not putting a label on it, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's important to take a step back, like take a pause and really be honest with yourself and ask, am I adding some of these negative connotations to the word networking? Because they don't have to be there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And why does it feel icky? I mean, that's a part of the episode title. So there's something there. Why do people feel that way?
Yeah. A lot of it I've found is when we get to a place where we need to ask for something and we feel like we're just taking and not giving back, right? So I don't want to show up to a meeting with you and be like, hey, here's what I need you to do.
I want this from you.
Yeah, I need this from you. It's kind of a control thing too. It feels a bit manipulative and it doesn't feel like a give and take. Like there's not a reciprocal exchange there. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, I think people can feel that. And so it's like, you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to ask for too much. And people like giving too, right? So you want to be able to do both. And another piece of this also, I think why it feels icky is if you feel like you have to turn it on one time a quarter, for example, and go to a networking event.
Yeah.
Versus making it more of a part of just your normal practice. Like, have that piece of your brain on that's like looking out for new connections and looking out for being able to help people. Just
make it part of your lifestyle, it seems.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I mean, I'm in sales, been in sales for a long time, and I still, if I go a while without like networking or a meeting and then I go into it, I feel like I'm really bad. And I don't know. It's almost like when you go to an interview and you have that pit in your stomach.
Yeah.
Like it never kind of goes away unless you like make it part of your everyday and you change like maybe how you look at it and whatnot. Okay.
And then, the practice, right? Like, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, the less we do something, the harder it is to jump back into it. But if it's like going to the gym, like if you go a few times a week, then you build that muscle and it doesn't feel so hard to use, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So obviously like our listeners are mostly job seekers or someone looking for career advice.
Yeah.
And I've read in quite a few places that networking is like the number one tool to landing that next job. So that's an important piece. Are there other reasons that networking would be important outside of getting a job? I mean, obviously that's the goal in today's episode, but what's important about it? If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think from people I've talked to and who I've worked with, and I have a coach myself too. I love coaching. and he was really eye-opening in telling me that it used to work differently. Even like a few years ago, you and I talked a little bit about like you could go on LinkedIn and you could get a job, like a great job. You could apply directly on LinkedIn, you could do no networking, and you could land this job. And it's just not the way that it's working anymore. And so I think that's something important to just look at the reality of it as well. It's like just because it used to work doesn't mean it works right now. And what I've seen work much better and be more efficient is instead of spinning your wheels and applying directly on LinkedIn, where you're getting, I know recruiters are getting thousands of resumes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Per job. And instead tapping into your network and, you know, using that, it's more efficient. It can be more fun too.
Yeah.
But your question was more around what else other than job seeking?
It's like another, you know, what other pros can come out of networking besides like a job? Obviously, you mentioned like helping people.
Yeah.
Just maybe like some motivation for listeners to go out and network and think of more of it as not just, okay, I'm going out and finding a job.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like what other great things could come out of it?
Right. Well, that stat too, we were talking about around like, okay, so 30 to 35% of professionals say they actually genuinely enjoy networking, which is not a lot of people.
No.
And then that leaves the rest, like 65 to 70% find it, you know, awkward, stressful, intimidating, even if they realize the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that can be fun and get people out of their comfort zone is thinking about something you like outside of work. So I love storytelling, and I go to an event once a month called the Monty, and I get to go talk to people who I would never normally interact with, and they come from all types of backgrounds career-wise. Like many of them aren't in tech also, so it's kind of a nice change of pace.
Nice. Yeah.
And for me, that's just fun. So I don't go to specifically network, but I'm not closed to networking while I'm there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're finding like you're kind of mixing it. So you're, you know, if you have a hobby, go do that and you'll meet people and then you'll end up naturally networking. I feel like that's kind of a good for people who maybe are stuck, like, where do I begin? Maybe start there, going where you're comfortable instead of going to like maybe some professional conference where there's a bunch of VPs in healthcare and like you're, you know, maybe it's just, I think what you meant earlier, like someone loves skiing and then you join like a ski group and met people that way. And then you ease your way into it will be, I don't know if that's good advice or not, but
no, exactly.
I feel like that would be a good step for people who are like, I don't want to network. So you like really don't want to socialize no matter what it is.
Right. So at least put yourself in a position where you're around activities and people that you really enjoy and would be doing regardless of like networking is involved or not, right?
Yeah.
And be able to practice those skills. It's like in a safe space because you break it down, you're doing the same things. You're making relationships, you're talking to people, you're learning about them, you're sharing about you. Like at the end of the day, it's all very similar behaviors, but it just kind of depends on the setting that you're in. So, and if you're lucky, maybe you'll find that job and the networking thing. I shouldn't even call it networking. And like the meetup or the event that you're there for, run club, for skiing meetup, for, you know, whatever it is that you're interested in.
Yeah. You get friends out of it. I've known people who found their partners through networking.
Totally.
I've had account managers actually marry their clients.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, even though that they were getting paid to network, it was their job.
No, but you're right. I mean, friendships, relationships that I these days in life, I think about it so much more holistically than I used to. Like my job's my job, then I have my family, then I have my, I don't know, health and stuff. And now I just think about it so much more interconnected. Yeah. I'm going to network in all of these areas, right? Or I'm just going to show up as myself and meet people versus like all this compartmentalizing.
Yeah. You know? And like strategizing and whatnot.
Yeah.
This would be a good transition into the mindset. Mm-hmm. So I know when we were talking one-on-one earlier, that was a big piece. So can you go in depth on the mindset, what that means for networking? Yeah,
well, like what we were saying with just looking at the strict definition, right? There's nothing in there about it being negative or pushy or icky. So we add a lot of that with our mindset and those negative connotations to, we hear the word networking, there's this pathway in our brain. That's like, no, that's not fun. So it really is like intentionally shifting our mindset to think about it in more of this like expansive way. And in this way, the thing that helps me the most is thinking about what I can give. So if I can go to a conversation and often I do. I'm very generous with my network, right? Like I love connecting people. So that's something to consider, right? For any listeners who, if you feel like you don't have a lot to give, what if you can connect them with your sister who does this thing that they need, right?
Yeah.
Or a neighbor who has a cool graphic design service, right? So just if you can shift your mindset into thinking about what can I give, even in terms of connections, it's super helpful to people, right? And the other piece that I'm noticing too is just this emphasis on community. And I see it everywhere. Like you were at Startup Week in Raleigh, Durham a few weeks ago. There's so much talk around community and the importance of it. And some of this ties back to, I thought this was fascinating to learn a few years ago, that one of the reasons that humans are even a species today that exists is because we worked as community. We worked together to survive. We would not have survived as individualists. Like we wouldn't be here today. So it's one of
We're
our
cannibalist.
Yeah, no, it's like people have such an individual approach to life, or I've seen, especially in the United States, of like I got this, I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's like that's not how we are here today. Like it's part of our DNA to work together and to be in tribes, so to speak, and like to help each other succeed. So along that, path of how we're here, it's like, well, how do you develop community? Networking is a big piece of that, right? You have to
start building
people.
your team, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's not even just a nice to have. It really is like it's part of who we are. Is how I see it.
Yeah. And kind of going back, it's like, it's in our DNA. That's how we are a semi-functioning maybe society today.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, you can get so much more out of it. You can, just through my professional network, I've had people come and do like work on my house. They're like, oh, you're doing this at your house? I know someone. And you'd always get so much more out of it. It's not about what you're getting, it's what you can give.
Yeah.
So when people approach networking, I think we've talked about a couple of things that kind of help their mindset to start. So focus on the giving and almost take out the negative connotation of networking, because it's not negative. It's really not. Like you said, it's built in our DNA and everything. But do you have or can you give the audience maybe a step-by-step guidance on where they can start to, who are they reaching out to and who should they reach out to for what they want? Or should they even think about what they want? Where do people start and what's the steps to go from there?
Yeah, great question. It can feel overwhelming. If you're like, well, I don't have a big network, or maybe I do, but I don't know how to leverage it. And so a great starting point is just taking inventory. So whether you write down with pen and paper or pull out your Google Doc and just really start writing everyone's name down.
That you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
friends, family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And put it into categories. And this will give you, we think we know, it's like, we'll think about our network and it'll just be kind of like vague and general. But once you put pen to paper and you can actually see everyone's names and what categories, and you can't do right or wrong with categories. I mean, think about things like colleagues, friends, people who are in groups that you like to go to, just throw everybody on there and then start to sort it. And then you'll have a much better place the data to look at and be like, okay, this is the current state of my network. And then you can start seeing maybe where you want to focus a little bit. Like if it's lacking in the colleague space or people who can, help you maybe find new opportunities, then you'll want to focus there for now. And it's always going to be changing a little bit too. It's like relationships come and go in our lives, and that's okay. But this also makes me think of one interesting thing I saw in prep for this is there's a sociologist, research sociologist, Mark Granovetter, and he talks a lot about the concept of strong and weak ties. And so, of course, some of our relationships are stronger.
Oh, yeah.
Than others. Like we see people more, and it's not good or bad. It's how they are. And he actually talks about outside of our immediate circle. So like in our weak ties, those are more important for spotting opportunities and accessing new information versus
the weak ones. Okay.
And the weak ones versus like our best friends we talk to every day.
Yeah.
And so he also points out from his research that the number of connections is actually less important than the diversity of those connections. So it kind
So
of
more
goes,
categories
exactly
is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So start with the list. And then so when they have that list and they realize that maybe their colleagues, like you said, is less than their friends.
Mhm.
So they need to start there to build the colleague network more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe once they're at that balance of, okay, I have like 25% of these 4 categories. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that technical, I guess. But say they're at like a good balance, then what? Do they just start reaching out equally and like they're done building? Now where do they go?
Yeah. So after you build your inventory of your network, then reflect back. So this could be different for everyone.
Okay.
If the purpose, for this conversation is to find a job, then look back and say, where did I find my last job? Like, how did that happen? Right. And then instead of recreating the wheel, focus more on that. So I was working with a client recently, and once we did this activity, he looked at it and he was like, actually, I realized that where I've found my recent gigs was through recruiting and staffing agencies.
Oh, nice.
And so he had 4 on his networking list who he had worked with over the past few years. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to reach back out to them, see what roles they have open. And then he landed his next gig. So it sounds really obvious, but I don't think it always is. Like, look back and see what worked for you before.
I think people, when they think of that, they just get that icky feeling, and then it makes them stop, and then they go, I don't want to say the easy route, but because applying to jobs is not easy in itself, but then they just do that, and they're getting no traction on the job applications. But like you said earlier, it's not really where, for whatever reason, people aren't getting as many jobs through applications now.
Right.
I mean, I have my own opinions on that, but that's a whole nother episode.
I'm sure you have like a whole episode.
Okay. So they start reaching out and they focus on what they give. How do people find their give? I mean, like you said, it could be like a sister that does something, or do they even need to think about what their give is? Or is it just the mindset of, let me just give what I can?
That's a great question. I think it kind of, again, can depend on your specific situation.
Yeah. I know it's kind of hard to talk generalities.
Yeah, no, but it's good to have rules of thumb too, like what works for most people. The thing that's coming to mind for me, because I was in a vulnerable place of like, shoot, I don't have much to give. I left my job a little over a year ago that I'd been at for forever. It felt like leaving kind of a part of my identity. But I was just ready to explore something new. And like everyone would say not to do, I didn't set that new thing up before I left. So I was a little bit like, oh, shoot. But I'm very fortunate that I have a very supportive network, great friends and family, and they're all very connected. And so one of the pieces of advice I got was, hey, what if you send out an email that goes out to all of your network, your strong and your weak ties, and just be honest, tell them where you're at. Like, tell them what your background is, which most of them know already, but just kind of summarize it and then tell them what you're looking for. And I thought I needed to say, this is the specific job I want.
Yeah, this is the job title. This is a salary. I want it here.
Exactly. I thought I needed to have that level of detail.
Yeah.
And that actually got in my way of sending this email out sooner. And so a friend encouraged me. It's like, just tell them where you're at now. And so I was like, oh, is that okay? Like, I'm not really anywhere right now. Like,
I am nowhere. That's why I'm reaching out to you.
And that's what I ended up saying. I was just like, hey guys, I was at this job for forever. It was a big part of my life. I was ready for something different. Here's my background in leadership development, in program management, interested in coaching, have experience in that. As you're reading this, if anything comes to mind that you think I should check out, or a person comes to mind who you could connect me with, then I would so appreciate it. And talk about like not feeling icky. Like at the end of it, I wrote a PS like, hey, if you don't want to be on these emails in the future, sincerely, please let me know and I'll take you off this list.
Yeah.
Because I plan to send out a few with like updates and,
Gotcha. Okay. Like updates as in like where you're at or, oh, nice. So let them know, hey, I found something. Thanks for thinking of me kind of thing.
Exactly.
Cool.
And it was a result of that email I got over the course of about 3 months, I would say, 20 meetings. Those were all a variety of like Zoom or phone calls or in-person meetings.
Okay.
And what would happen was I would meet with people and then they would connect me to other people. And so it just was this like continuous building of my network. And it was actually really fun. I enjoyed it.
Great. And you got something like, did you get what you wanted out of it in terms of a job or whatever?
Yeah. It was a little indirect. So
Eventually it got there. Well, that's the point of networking.
Yeah. So I will say, don't let it discourage you. For anyone listening around, like, I'm the type of person who wants a really straight line of like, I talked to this person and then I got that very specific role that I didn't even have to find yet. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened. Like what happened was I was like in this place of diverging, building my network. And I did get to a point where it felt a little overwhelming. Like there's only so many coffee dates you can have a week.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just noticed that and started converging a little bit. Like, what have I learned from all these new conversations? Where is that leading me in terms of what I'm looking for in my career? And let me go down this more solidified path. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for coaching, for presence training, for things like that is what it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would just encourage people to notice that, right? It might get overwhelming.
Yeah. But if you keep that mindset, I would think it should help the overwhelming piece of it. If you think of like, I'm coming to this meeting to see how I can help this person, and hopefully in return, they're thinking the same thing.
Yeah. And I think someone gave me this advice and I thought it was great. Even if this part feels a little like, oh, I'm asking too much, challenge yourself. You're already at a conversation with somebody. You're already sitting down to have coffee or with Zoom. They've given their time, 30 minutes or whatever, right? And then I encourage people to ask, hey, thank you so much for this time. Is there anyone else based on this conversation who comes to mind who you could connect me with? It might be good for me to talk to. And can I do the same for you? Like, is there any way I can support you?
Yeah, any way I can help you. I was going to ask that when you are actually sitting in front of that person on the phone, because sometimes when I've networked, it's, I'm talking to people and not that I want to get something out of them, but I'm giving. And then I'm like, how can they help me? Not that that's like my purpose of it, but I mean, being on the staffing recruiting side, we are the givers.
That's true.
So, and I'm like, I wonder how with all these connections that I have, I mean, I'm talking to probably like 50 to 60 people a week. And we do a lot of like free work for people and whatnot, because we give a lot back. We have like free resume review Tuesdays, and like we're going to client meetings, giving them like all this free consulting and advice. But then they're like, thank you for that. Bye now. And I'm like, am I just working for free? You're like, doing this wrong. So your advice would be to sit there and then after you're like, okay, well, I guess how do you ask for like, what can you give me? Or I mean, if you find yourself the one just always giving, how can you flip the table and be like, well, based on this, like, what can you do? How do you ask it for it back if it's not reciprocated? Or do you even ask? It's just like, okay, whatever, I did my duty. I'm going to move on now and not think about it too much.
That one's tricky because it's almost like the other side of, the person who is sitting there. I want to kind of encourage them to ask, because they're hopefully recognizing all of the value they're receiving from you, that's where I'd want them to ask, like, what can I do to help you? What can I do to support you? It is a little harder on the other end, I think. And I think that's probably where it comes into place of like having limits, to what you're able to give. Because it can be
you want anything further, like here's our pricing. I mean, obviously that's not networking. That's obviously like now we're diving into sales. Sorry,
but it can all be related too, right? In one conversation, you can get into sales, and then I hadn't thought about this before you asked the question, but it probably is like an onus on our part as the giver, like to not turn into a martyr, right? Where we're like resenting because of how much we're giving and we're not getting anything back, but. It's probably the only thing within our control is to like have those boundaries. Here's what I'm comfortable giving without anything in return. Once we're past that point, it's going to feel like I'll get resentful of it or something. So I'm just going to stop to protect the relationship and protect myself. But that's a great question. I know it can get that way.
Yeah. I think there's someone told me before, it's like, if you're in that situation, just keep going, keep doing it, because later that person will remember you by providing that value. And then they should be ideally like you're at the top of their mind when they do need something that you can provide, or they'll refer you to someone like, oh, this person really helped me. Let me introduce you, again, going back to your networking, but it might just be that indirect loop.
Which is hard. It's a great point of not
patience.
expecting something immediate.
Yeah.
Like I think
It's
we're
that
so
mindset.
used to instant gratification in today's world that if we don't see like post this conversation, you give me the thing I wanted, then it's easy to categorize it as like, oh, that wasn't valuable. But to your point, it could come back around a year later.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it might be, it might just be long-term gratification instead of instant.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And then I kind of leave a lot of those meetings still thinking like, oh, well, I'm really glad I got to help them. Hopefully they got something out of it. And then I'll just kind of keep in touch.
yeah.
So
Yeah, keeping the relationship open too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw keep mentioning Startup Week, but that was such a fun week a
It
few weeks
was.
ago. And one of the organizers brought on a friend of his who is now at what is it? OpenAI. And he's like, we meet every 12 to 18 months and have lunch. That's it.
oh, wow. One lunch a year.
12 to 18 months they have lunch and they catch up. It's a big, like here's what I'm doing, here's what he's doing. And he's like, from that consistency, even though it's not a lot, he was a panel speaker. Like they have enough of a relationship for him to come join this event that was put on and to consider each other part of each other's networks.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a ton of time.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It seems like it needs to be consistent. I actually had a client I met with the other day who mentioned that. He's like, I worked at these agencies in the past. I really like this one, but I've never used this one, but they always reach out to me. So he's like, I want to give them a shot because they just always check in every, 4 months and just a little check in, like keeping your network active and nothing like dramatic, not a lunch every week or whatever, just once a year, a lunch or like once a quarter, like whatever much you think you should be checking in, but like checking in and remaining consistent seems to be like key post network.
Totally.
Post initial networking. Okay. So you mentioned the verbiage on the email that you had sent out before. Was that the exact verbiage that you used?
Yes. And I'm happy to share that with you too, if we could put in show notes or something.
Yeah. We'll put it in the comments for the listeners, that exact verbiage that she used. Obviously, make it your own.
Yes.
But don't copy paste.
Feel free to use it as a template, steal away. I'll be totally honest. I borrowed from a friend. So it's something that's been passed along. Like keep
the friend's going to be like, I want some royalties for this.
Yeah. Whoever started it. Thank you.
So you mentioned you got 20 meetings out of that, coffees, phone calls, whatever.
Yeah.
How many messages did you send? Were they emails, LinkedIn, a mix? And how many did you send out to get a 20 set in return?
It was from that one email thread. Literally, I BCC'd everybody.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was from my personal Google email. I BCC'd. I'll check when I go home to see like the exact number because that would be cool. It's cool stats. Honestly,
yeah, I was kind of curious. Was it like 5,000, 20 responses?
Yeah, definitely not that many. My guess is probably about 50 or 60.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then I think I stayed on that same thread. Literally, I could go back and it's just like I'd reply to people in thread just directly, right? And that's another piece actually that's important to mention when you reach out to someone and do you have an ask like that, to be mindful of your response time.
Oh yeah.
It's important and you want to be excited. I was excited about it. So anytime I get an email, I would pretty much respond immediately, but don't wait like a week to get back to somebody on that. Like let them know it's important. How do you do that? Is that you're paying attention to it. And I would say rule of thumb for me was like 24 hours, but I don't know. What do you think?
I think 24 hours. Yeah. Same day, 24 hours. Obviously, if you're getting emails past 4 next morning, fine or whatever. But yeah, I think after 24 hours, I think it gets a little downhill from that in terms of like the view of the people, especially when they're like, you're the one kind of seeking help and asking the request. And then it's like, oh, sorry, I was on vacation for a week. Now now I'm ready for a phone call with you. So maybe don't reach out if you know you're going to be busy over the next couple of days or a week. Like make sure it's a time when you're able to kind of commit. And if you are really busy and you know your time's not going to die down, I would suggest maybe don't send out, 100 messages. Start with like your top 20 people and then get through that the next week, your next 20, and like break it up into pieces instead of like mass blast.
Exactly. I was at a place where I didn't have a job at the time, so I had plenty of time.
Like
and
go
even
to coffee every day.
Yeah, we'll call it a sabbatical. So I would receive those in my inbox, and it felt like such a gift, right? So I was so excited. Anytime people took the time to respond, it meant a lot to me. And I was really surprised actually at the people I heard back from, and some who I didn't, who I expected to. So don't take any of it personally, right? But it's just like,
know who your friends are.
Who are your real friends? But I think just being open to whoever has the energy at that point in life and in time to help you out, like be open to it and don't be expecting of anybody.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, like it's in our human nature to want to help people. That's like the community in us. People want to help you, so don't be afraid to ask. But there is a certain way to ask to get what you want out of it, and then also be able to give what you can. So
yeah.
Anything you want to add? Any last minute kind of motivators or reminders for people?
Yeah, we haven't said this a lot, but it feels like part of the fabric of the conversation. But this is gonna sound cheesy, but networking really can be fun.
Yeah,
like if you can, kind of goes back to that mindset piece. Like, think about it in a way that isn't intimidating or icky or gross or like manipulative, and come at it at a playful way. It's going to have a very different energy to it in your conversations.
Yeah.
And just tap into your like genuine interest for other people, right? Like, and if that's not very real for you right now, like there's so many ways to prep for a conversation, like looking up people's LinkedIn history, doing a little bit of research on where they went to school, or, just having a little bit of that common ground coming in. It doesn't mean you're over preparing. To me, it just means you're showing interest in getting to know that person. And you've done a little bit of homework to accelerate that connection. So that's one thing, is keep it fun, play with it. And then I know we've talked about giving a lot, and you're reflecting back, like something that helped me a ton is to not be afraid to, ask for like, who can you connect me with at the end of every conversation?
Yeah.
And how can I support you? So it's both.
That's huge. I think it's a compliment. And just to that one note, and then we'll wrap. But when you say, who can you connect me with? I mean, I think it's, if you look at it this way, if someone asked me that, I would be like, wow, you thought this conversation was valuable and you think I know cool people?
It's a compliment.
Let me think of my circle. She thinks I'm interesting or something. I don't know. I would take it as a compliment. I wouldn't be like, unless you were trying to just like push a sell on me the whole time. Right. Like, do you know anyone else who needs a used car? But, but yeah, if it's a natural conversation, that would be a compliment to me. But anyway, really good advice. This is huge. Networking, especially if you're stuck in your job applications and stuff, try this. Like the number one hire is referrals. Yeah. And if you're networking and you get that referral, well, now you're at that number one slot to get that position. So really good topic. Thank you for sharing your expertise today, Lauren. And comment below if you have any questions, want to add, comment, share your experience. We'd love to hear it.